The storm outside had barely begun to unleash its fury, a low, menacing rumble far beyond the windowpane. Yet, inside a small, dimly lit bedroom situated miles away, a little girl's carefully constructed world was already collapsing into dust and terror. Her hands were seized by a violent, unstoppable trembling as she tightly gripped an old, plastic-cased phone whose screen was cracked like a spiderweb. Fat, hot tears flowed ceaselessly down her face, already blotchy and swollen from earlier suppressed sobs. The night itself felt heavy and suffocating, the kind of oppressive darkness that seemed to press physically against the brittle walls and made every single sound, even her own breathing, echo with sheer, raw fear. Her small chest rapidly rose and fell in panicked, shallow gasps as she forced her tiny fingers to type out the sequence of words no child should ever, under any circumstances, have to compose. Her name was Emily Carter, and she was barely 7 years old. Nevertheless, her wide, haunted eyes already carried the profound, crushing weight of horrors she had witnessed far too many times. Tonight, however, was incomparably worse. Tonight, she had watched her mother, Sarah, crumple to the floor, heard a sickening, distinct crack, and then saw the awful, impossible way her mother's arm bent. A grotesque angle that arms were simply not designed to assume. She didn't know what protocols to follow, didn't know the proper emergency number, so she typed one desperate, agonizing message to the only number she could recall from a fading school flyer about community safety contacts. But she typed the number incorrectly, and that seemingly minor error, that tragic, fateful mistake, would set into motion an unstoppable chain of events that would change everything. She hit send, the screen flashing the confirmation. "He broke Mom's arm. Please help us." Before we delve any deeper into the sudden, sharp trajectory of their lives, if you find yourself moved by true kindness, if you hold faith in second chances, and if you believe in the fierce courage required to step forward and help others when they are at their absolute lowest point, then please show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Take a moment to tell us in the comments where you are watching this story from. Your engagement genuinely helps this channel cut through the noise and reach more compassionate hearts just like yours. Far across town, as Emily dissolved into helpless sobs with her face buried in her knees, Jack Morgan was meticulously cleaning the polished chrome handlebars of his customized motorcycle inside a cluttered, cavernous garage. The garage air was thick with the low, intoxicating scent of motor oil, fuel, and seasoned leather, reflecting sharply off the numerous tools and chrome fittings. Jack's leather vest, deliberately marked by the imposing insignia of a tight-knit biker club known as Savage Wings, hung heavy on his broad shoulders, a map of scars detailing years lived hard on rough, unforgiving roads. His face, usually stern, unyielding, and utterly intimidating, carried a persistent shadow of grief. A deep, ancient sorrow lodged firmly within the core of his being. Jack was widely known for his immense physical strength, his stoic, unmoving presence, and his profound silence. But above all these traits, he was known for one unwavering moral absolute: his fierce inability to ignore anyone in genuine need. Tonight, when his phone buzzed violently with an unfamiliar, oddly structured number, he fully expected the notification to be a wrong number, perhaps just another spam text attempting a scam. What he slowly read instead paralyzed him mid-breath, freezing the air in his lungs. "He broke Mom's arm. Please help us." For a chilling, prolonged moment, Jack felt the ghosts of his own brutal childhood, clawing their agonizing way back to the very forefront of his consciousness. Vivid, painful memories flashed through his mind. The image of a violently angry father, the sight of a helpless, defeated mother, and the silent desperation of a frightened little boy who prayed with all his might that someone, anyone, would eventually come for them. No one ever did. But Jack had done the grueling, necessary work of growing up into the powerful, protecting man he himself had once desperately needed. He wasn't going to let history repeat itself in another child's life. So, he replied instantly, his large thumb moving with surprising speed, sending only 3 spare, deliberate words. Words that were instantly weighted with the full force of a silent promise he knew, deep in his bones, he wasn't going to break. "I'm on my way." Emily didn't know who had responded to her chaotic plea. She didn't know if they were police, a neighbor, or someone bad. She didn't care. All she knew with terrifying clarity was that her mother, Sarah Carter, lay pale and frighteningly still on the scarred living room floor. The man who had caused the damage, Sarah's current boyfriend, Lucas Dean, was pacing relentlessly in the adjacent kitchen, utterly drunk, muttering toxic, self-pitying words only he could possibly understand. Emily's small heart thudded painfully against her ribs like a trapped bird as she remained tightly hidden behind the heavy, dusty fabric of the couch, clutching the old phone like the only tether to life. Her eyes darted constantly. She kept checking the front door, anticipating the unknown help, and then frantically checking her mother's shallow, almost imperceptible breathing, praying for movement. Every single minute felt stretched, elongated, into an hour of agony. The small house felt less like a home and more like a suffocating cage, and every deepening shadow seemed to writhe and move with palpable, concentrated malice. Meanwhile, Jack erupted from his garage bay, his leather vest already thrown roughly over his shoulders, his heavy boots pounding the asphalt as he violently revved his monstrous motorcycle back to roaring life. The engine's explosive roar split the sodden silence of the night, echoing like a declaration of war through the empty, rain-slicked streets as he raced toward an address that was, at best, a panicked scribble. The little girl had mangled the street name in her terror, letters mixed, house numbers misplaced. But Jack had grown up hard in this forgotten town. He knew these crumbling neighborhoods, the tiny, ill-maintained rental houses, the exact types of desolate places where desperate, cornered families ended up when life had relentlessly backed them into a wall. He followed sheer instinct, gut-wrenching intuition, and the furious, small spark deep in his chest that told him unequivocally that somewhere out there, a terrified child was counting on him to be real. The rain began to fall even harder, driving sideways, mercilessly soaking his leather jacket to the bone. But he refused to slow down, leaning aggressively into the storm. He felt the frigid cold bite sharply into his skin, but the pain meant nothing. The illuminated roads blurred past him as he scanned every dismal block for any sign, a beacon of fear. And then, finally, he saw it. A single, dim porch light flickering erratically like a fading heartbeat, and a cheap curtain shifting suddenly as if someone small had just ducked violently out of sight. Inside, Emily was clutching her mother's limp fingers, whispering hoarse, desperate pleas for her to wake up, begging her mother to stay conscious and alive. The moment Lucas stomped angrily toward them again, Emily instantly held her breath, praying he wouldn't spot her shaking uncontrollably behind the sofa. His footsteps were heavy, brutal, and utterly consumed by alcohol-fueled rage. Emily's stomach twisted into a painful knot as he threw open cabinets with destructive force, shouting vile obscenities for painkillers, cursing her mother for having the audacity to inconvenience him, even while she lay unconscious. He was too consumed by his own fury to notice the looming shadow that passed across the front window. He didn't hear the roar of the engine suddenly go silent outside. But Emily did. Her heart stopped dead in her chest. Was this the help she prayed for, or had the noise simply drawn someone worse? Then came a knock. It was slow, immensely firm, and profoundly controlled. A knock that didn't politely ask for permission to enter. A knock that carried a quiet, uncompromising warning. Lucas turned, his face dark with furious interruption, and swung the door open violently, propelled by the concentrated rage of a man who had completely lost control long, long ago. But the instant his eyes locked onto Jack, he froze like a startled, confused animal, belatedly realizing it had carelessly wandered directly into the killing path of a seasoned wolf. Jack stood framed in the narrow doorway, entirely drenched by the sheeting rain, a towering figure carved not from flesh but from storms and shadows. His massive beard dripped water onto the damp welcome mat. His eyes, sharp, fierce, and utterly unblinking, scanned the entire room in one swift, professional motion, and then softened almost imperceptibly the moment they landed on Emily's small, terrified form. For a brief, suspended heartbeat, the little girl felt her world finally, gloriously steady again. Jack stepped inside the threshold without waiting for a single word of permission. His sheer, formidable presence alone seemed to instantly shift the atmosphere of the room, physically pushing the lingering violence into a far corner where it could no longer exert its corrosive power. Lucas sputtered incoherently, desperately trying to regain the pathetic dominance he once wielded in that space. But Jack's intense stare silenced him instantly, completely. Jack didn't need to shout, didn't need to issue one explicit threat. He simply stood like a fortress, silent and enormous, positioned directly between the danger and the innocent people he had come across the storm to protect. Emily painfully crawled out from the inadequate safety of the couch, trembling from head to foot. When Jack gently knelt to her eye level, something deep inside her finally broke, not out of renewed fear, but out of an overwhelming, soul-shaking relief. She wordlessly pointed a tiny, shaking finger toward her mother lying motionless on the floor, and Jack immediately moved to Sarah's side, checking her breathing with practiced care, and gently lifting her head. He handled her not like a complete stranger encountering a victim, but like someone who deeply understood the reality of human fragility. Lucas attempted weakly to protest, but Jack completely ignored him, treating his voice like the buzzing of an irritating fly. He called an ambulance using his own phone, his voice resonating firm, steady, and entirely authoritative. When Lucas foolishly took one angry, aggressive step forward, Jack finally turned his full attention to him. His eyes hardened instantly to chips of ice, warning etched into every taut line on his face. Lucas stumbled backward, suddenly shrinking, suddenly small, and utterly powerless. When the paramedics finally arrived, Jack remained resolutely by Emily's side. He helped carefully carry Sarah to the waiting stretcher. He followed behind the speeding ambulance on his motorcycle, slicing through the heavy, blinding rain, absolutely determined not to leave them alone for even a single second more. At the Stark Hospital, he stayed awake all through the relentless night, sitting rigidly in a stiff, uncomfortable plastic chair, gently allowing Emily to sleep soundly with her head resting securely against his soft, worn leather vest. Every so often, he would quietly check on Sarah through the glass window, profound relief slowly warming his features as her critical condition finally stabilized. By the gray light of the following morning, the local police had already taken Lucas into custody, using Emily's desperate text message and the detailed medical findings as overwhelming evidence. For the first time in a very long time, safety no longer felt like a wistful, impossible dream. It felt unequivocally real. But what happened next was something even Jack, the solitary, hardened biker, didn't fully expect. Sarah woke with slow tears forming in her eyes, thanking him in a whisper so fragile it might break. Her voice thin yet profoundly filled with desperate gratitude. Emily, waking, simply clung to him, adamantly refusing to let him leave her sight. And Jack felt something vital deep inside himself finally crack open. A door he had kept violently shut and bolted for decades. He had saved them, that was true, yes, but in a far more meaningful way they had undoubtedly saved him, too. Saved him from the crushing loneliness that had followed him like an inescapable shadow his entire adult life. Saved him from a life where he truly believed he was never meant to be anyone's hero, least of all a small child's. Over the ensuing weeks and months, Jack became far more than just a rescuer. He became a fixture, a lifeline, and eventually family. He used his practical skills to fix their broken front door, symbolically sealing their safety. He patiently helped Sarah recover physically and emotionally. He took Emily for slow, careful rides on quiet, winding streets, letting her laugh again. A pure, bell-like sound. Letting her be a happy, protected child again. The house that had once ominously echoed only with terror and pain now echoed beautifully with laughter and second chances. And before we move into the final, defining part of this transformation story, please pause and comment below. What action would you have taken if you had received an urgent message like Emily's? Your voice and your ethical choices matter. As the months seamlessly passed, Emily grew stronger, noticeably happier, and undeniably safer. Sarah slowly found her courage and self-worth again. And Jack, once a man completely lost and consumed by old, festering wounds, finally found his true, enduring purpose. Their lives intertwined in quiet, unexpected ways none of them could have ever predicted. All of it traceable back to one single, desperate message sent to the wrong number. Or perhaps it was precisely the right number all along. If this story touched your heart in the way it touched ours, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps ensure these life-changing stories of intervention and hope reach even more people who desperately need to find hope, faith, and fierce courage today.